One of the things that we do at the beginning of every new Fencepost client onboarding is we go through a persona exercise. I think that's one of the top things that people are missing within any marketing strategy they employ is they're not actually selling to the person that's buying their product or service. They're selling to themselves. And we just said it, like yourself isn't the one buying your own product or service.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this. And it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Today, we've got another Profit First success story, and our guest, Ross McDaniel, is going to talk about the 4 growth principles essential for home services businesses. At the end of the day, it's about predictable profits and thriving small businesses just like you. See, Ross isn't just a growth strategist. He's spent a decade helping brands to excel and grow. He's passionate about community development, and he's the brains behind Fencepost and the local growth formula. It's all about helping first-rate home services businesses connect with great customers and clients. According to him, it only takes 4 simple ingredients for any local business to witness predictable, profitable growth. And that's one of my favorite topics. Let's meet him and learn. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Ross McDaniel. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Augusta, Georgia. I worked agency side for a number of years. And about 4 years ago, my wife and I decided that it was time to take enterprise level learnings we've had in the agency space and go out on our own. So we started Fencepost, which is a home service digital marketing agency. And we really have distilled down what we believe about marketing from all those years, serving Fortune 1000 companies to, hey, there's 4 basic growth principles for any company, but specifically for local growth. We believe those 4 basic principles are visibility, competency, social proof, and referral. If we can capture those, we can help change communities by establishing thriving local home service businesses.
So we'll dig into that shortly. Before we do, I want to chat about Profit First. And before we do that, you all heard he lives in Augusta. So if you don't know what the Augusta rule is, how to use that when you live in Augusta, or just as a business owner, a way to pay yourself tax-free, we got to chat about that one day. But today we're here to talk about Profit First. Ross, how did you learn about Profit First?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, another agency owner told me about Profit First a number of years ago and really just dove right in. I think anything in the vein of putting more dollars in your pocket as a business owner at the end of the year is pretty appealing. And profit first, Mike, he did exactly that.
That's awesome. So it's helped you to become and stay profitable?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, being in an agency seat, right? Typically our margins are going to be a bit higher than maybe one of my clients, a home service business, where there's lots of overhead, lots of COGS, lots of things like that. And, for us, we've got pretty decent margins. So we've really had to work hard at maximizing what are we doing with the margin that we have and how are we allocating to some of those other accounts. But yeah, it's been pretty integral to the way we work.
So I'm guessing, because I know when people have good margins, the tax account becomes really important because you have big tax bills. And then how do you appropriately reinvest in your business instead of just spending money because you have it? And I think too often that is what many business owners do. They have money, they spend it, and they don't always get a return on what they spend on. And one of the things that drives me crazy is all the money they spend on marketing, because they don't always get a return on it. And they can't tell me, well, I spent $1,000 on marketing. Did it work? Well, I got clients. From which source? I have no clue. I'm like, hello? How do we know where to put more money if you don't know which ones are working? And I think part of it is everyone's throwing tactics first, like, oh, I need this or I need that. And if you actually sit down and have a conversation with them, they can't tell you their avatar clearly. They can't tell you where they're hanging out. They don't know which of their sales messages resonates the most. And they don't always realize what they're selling, right? People think, oh, I'm selling a deck. No, you're not selling a deck. You're selling a lifestyle, right? What is that lifestyle? People don't want to drill. They want what the drill provides them, which has nothing to do with the hole. So let's chat about that. So you mentioned at the beginning the 4 principles of growth. Let's repeat those and then let's start digging in.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, anything that requires growth from a business perspective, especially locally, you've got to be visible. Visibility doesn't just mean opening up shop and hanging your shingle. You got to be visible where people are looking for you. For home service businesses, a lot of times that's a Google search. Secondly, we've got to be good at what we do. We call this competency. This is the second ingredient. If you're not at least as good as the competition, then you're not going to get business. So you've got to be as good or better than the next best person out there, right? The third thing, and this is arguably the most important ingredient of the 4, is social proof. The most common form of social proof is a 5-star Google review. So when people have awesome experiences with you, they need to tell other people about it. And they need to shout that from the rooftop in a highly public, visible manner. We think that's a Google review. And the last piece, the last ingredient is referral. We want your customers to go sell for you. That's going to be the easiest money you ever made, is those people selling your business for you. If you combine those 4 things, we think that not only will profitability come, but predictability will come. And that's really the name of our game. We want it to be both profitable and predictable.
And I love predictable profits. And we talk about this all the time, is your business is a math equation, which means that you should know what those different variables are and how they work together. In other words, if I get 100 leads, that means I'm going to get 10 phone calls. 10 phone calls means that I'm going to make 5 proposals. 5 proposal means I'm going to get 2 sales. And I'm just making up those numbers.
Sure.
But once we know those numbers, we can then start to look at them and say, why is it that 10 turns into 5 or 100 turns into 10? How do I get 100 to turn into 20? So now we're not working on our business and throwing money at marketing. We're thinking about, how do we tweak our messages? How do we improve them so that I can spend the same amount of money and get double the return? And that's really where the magic happens. But if you don't know those numbers to put into your formula, you can't even tell where the breakdown is.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think for us, taking the math equation that you talk about, that Mike talks about, ultimately we want to put that same equation or framework for an equation into your marketing dollars. You mentioned at the very beginning, a lot of businesses are taking those profits that they've earned at the end of the year, and the next year they're reinvesting them into the business in the form of marketing dollars. But the problem is they're not putting those back into an equation that actually yields an actionable result at the end. And I think for us, our playbooks tactically, when we think of tactics, we think of like a Google ad or a Facebook ad or review automation software. Like tactically, a lot of those things are going to look the same for everybody. But when it comes to integrating them for your business and the way and the intent with which they're integrated, that is where it becomes, okay, we actually have to piece these together synchronously, actionably, instead of just, we've got tactics, we're throwing paint against the wall.
And I think that does come up because sometimes I'll ask my clients, how do you know where your customers came from? And they're like, well, they don't remember. They saw me on TV and then they saw, me on Google, or then they saw me on Facebook, and they can't always get me a good answer. Now, companies that are real good actually have ways of tracking all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And they can go, see, you said it, they can go from TV ad to where everybody's showing up and tracking them. Is that something you guys do and have the ability to do?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to that local growth formula, we're not going to want to do anything that we can't effectively map back to that formula. And so while we're tactically agnostic, we don't want to be so tied to a tool that we can't execute our formula. We do want every tool we use to be able to be tied to our formula. So we're never going to put anything in play that isn't trackable, therefore measurable, therefore actionable.
And that's the most important thing. So I know, especially in the beginning, actually, even throughout growth, visibility is one of the biggest issues. And taking the time to really figure out who that avatar is of yours and being able to do that research. So it's actually sitting down and looking at your clients. Are they clustered in a particular area? So in other words, if you're a high-end pool builder, right, my guess is you don't need to send advertising to the entire town. You've got to figure out the neighborhoods in that town which have the ability to put in a pool.
That's right.
And target them. And usually what happens is when one person on that street gets a pool, somebody else is nagging for a pool, right?
We're getting 2 pools on that street.
We're getting 2 pools on that street. So it's the targeted marketing going, okay, I sold this pool. I'm going to target the other 8 around it. And how do I know which ones of those are right? And so one of the things we even talk about is, your people are already out there. So putting up the signs, because that's a big driver. The second thing is looking around. Like if I looked at the other 8 houses, or if I took a drone and threw it up in the air or went to Google Maps and I looked at the other 8 houses, I could go, oh, well, those 3 don't have rooms for pool, right? Those 3 do. Guess which 3 doors I'm knocking on, right? It's a little bit of thinking differently and strategically to target those 3 people possibly for a pool. And I honestly, with Google, I think you might even be able to tell the ages of that people in the house.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned it before, getting to know your avatar. One of the things that we do at the beginning of every new Fencepost client onboarding is we go through a persona exercise. I think that's one of the top things that people are missing within any marketing strategy they employ is they're not actually selling to the person that's buying their product or service. They're selling to themselves. And we just said it, like yourself isn't the one buying your own product or service. So when we sit down and we actually map out, okay, these people are this old, they have this much disposable income, this much household income, they've got this many kids, they live in this zip code, not that zip code. And then we go in and actually map out what kind of copy they need to see, what kind of images do they need to see, what kinds of things actually hook them and bring them in. I think that's when the real magic starts to happen. And you even mentioned some like more boots on the ground, guerrilla, traditional non-digital forms of marketing. A lot of times our clients are taking that persona exercise, going to these houses that came from a digital lead, and then actually getting 4 referrals from, I mentioned earlier, the 5 around, where they're just planting signs, knocking on a door, 5 houses each way. You got to know your persona, got to know your audience.
You do, because each of those people might be, depending on what kind of business you're in, they might be on a different social media platform. They may get their news or their entertainment from different sources. And it's all predictable once you take the time to figure it out. Like, oh, these kind of people tend to hang out in these kind of places doing this kind of stuff. And so it's knowing that and then making it happen. And I think people don't realize this, but that old school knocking on 5 doors, if your guy is already there, how much does it cost to put 5 door hangers up? Not even $5.
A glorified version of referral too, though, right? Like, I mean, that's essentially a referral. If you see neighbor Bob's got a sweet new pool and your yard is neck and neck with theirs, why not get a pool overhaul? Just like neighbor Bob. Yeah.
And part of that is to say to Bob, hey, Bob, how about if you refer us to somebody, we'll do something for you. So it could be a $500 spiff because a pool's expensive, right? Or it could be, hey, if you refer a pool to us, we'll give you a free fire pit. Or, figure out what would entice neighbor Bob. Maybe it's a Weber grill. But, at the end of the day, to pay $500 after something has been sold that came with a perfect referral that made your sell process easy, I would do that all day long.
Yeah, why not? Why
not? So what was the next of the 4 principles?
Yeah, that next one is, the next most important one, I should say, is that social proof. Social proof really just, in the Fencepost context, means a Google review. We want 5-star reviews. And Google is the number one place that people are going to look for new home services, right? If you have a backed up toilet, backed up shower, you're going to Google immediately and you're saying, emergency plumbing service near me. We want to show up for that. And when we do show up for that, we know that 6 other plumbers are going to show up as well. So what's the differentiator? Well, it's social proof. It's what your peers, what your neighbors, what all the people in your community have said about whatever company you end up choosing that is actually the social proof. So we want proof that your product or service is as good or better than the competition's. And we want that in the form of a 5-star review. Highly public, highly visible.
And so I know for our clients, we talk about automating that system of when to ask for the 5-star review. It's before you're gone. It's while you're still in the process. Sometimes it's spiffing them and saying, thank you, here's a $20 Starbucks card. Like, this is what happens. This is the way, things work. The second thing, and much, much more important, when they connect with you, that connection needs to be easy, meaning there cannot be friction between them seeing your name, them clicking, and them either emailing, scheduling an appointment, or getting on a phone call with you. And all of those need immediate responses. Those that can respond the fastest win the business. So if the guy gets on and there's 5 phone numbers for 5 different businesses, he calls the first one, he gets an answering machine, he's calling the second one, then he's calling the third one. It's same thing with email. How quickly can you auto respond? And right now, there are AI bots and all this stuff. There's so many ways to do this to immediately get them on the phone and locking down whatever your business is, the appropriate next step.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you tied into the third ingredient, which would be competency there. The way that we affect a business's ability to be competent in what they do is we actually talk through how people are handling inbound leads. Because if that's our number one job is to get you predictable, profitable customers, well, that comes in the form of a lead. Well, what's happening when they're actually getting to you and ringing the phone? And that competency piece is, how are we answering the phone in a way that creates a user experience that is enjoyable, efficient, and actionable? Because if I need an emergency plumber and I call, I don't want a million questions about whatever. I want to know, yes, we can serve you. Yes, we'll be there at this time. This is the person that will be serving you, right? And so we help clients go through that process, get quality like lead capture scripts. We make sure that people are actually in place in the right seats to be answering the phones. You mentioned a lot of the AI tools and the automation tools out there. There's a ton of cool dialer systems that help you make sure that you capture all inbound phone calls. That's a crazy stat. I think it was a 2021 stat, but it's something like 41% plus of phone calls for home service businesses go unanswered. That's 41% of new business just left on the table. I don't know of what, but it's a massive chunk of change of new business being left on the table. So we always say when we're talking about competency, just pick up the phone. We can talk about what to do after that.
Well, and I think for a lot of the smaller home services businesses, they don't have a receptionist, right? It's the guy or the gal doing the work who answers the phone. And you're at a client site and, maybe you're you're doing the emergency plumbing and here you are, you got to answer the phone, or you got to have somebody who can do it for you in a way that kind of works.
I feel like there's some profit first principles in there as well, though, right? Like if this is an essential piece of our business, I don't know. Like to me, there's some buckets there that like this goes into that operational, that OpEx account. We've got to have somebody that's critical and functional to the operations of the business.
Well, so we're a big fan of removing profit from the business and not necessarily reinvesting it. But if we're going to reinvest it, then I'm going to look at them and say, okay, you want to reinvest some of your profit to hire a person to answer the phone because we left 41% of our clients not served, and we have the capacity to fill the 41%. So then at that point, we're sitting down and doing the math, right? To figure all those questions out and make sure that we have the ability, or we just start putting money aside in a separate account to hire that person so that in 3 months, the money is in that separate employee, the new employee account, so that we can hire them. We know we can pay them and we know we can make it work. And so there are a variety of different ways to do this, but everything comes back to, I know we keep saying the word math, and I just want you all to know something. This is second grade math. This is not,
that's right.
Algebra, calculus. This is literally pluses and minuses and a little bit of multiplication. It's really, really basic stuff that needs to be done. And when you can understand those basics, everything becomes clear. And you're like, oh, okay, if I can do this here, this is the outcome, this is how it flows, and this is what works. And if I have to spend X to achieve that, okay, that actually gives me a return. I actually make more money. Because the worst thing I hate is when somebody takes a business from 7 figures to 8 figures and they're working twice as hard, making half as much.
That's right.
And that is the dirty secret of what happens more often than not.
Yeah.
What was the next principle that we needed to chat about?
Well, we talked about competency a bit there too. So we roped in social proof and competency in one, but if you didn't hear, competency is you have to be as good or better than the competition at what you're actually offering to the public. So up to this point, we've got visibility. How visible are you to your customer when your customer needs you? Competency, how good are you at what you do? Are you as good or better than the competition? Social proof, when people engage with your business, are they shouting it from the rooftops in a publicly, highly visible manner? The last piece would be referral. And this is the piece that's actually the most tricky for an agency like Fencepost to integrate. But we can just take all of the collective experiences that we've had with all these small business owners, and yourself, Rocky, like you would be a great person to come in and advise on this too, is how do we get our customers to effectively sell for us? Because if we have that, we start decreasing the cost per client acquisition dramatically. And that's profit that we get to take right back out, right? If we can decrease our cost per acquisition, we get more profits to take home. And so what we are trying to do is with the other 3 ingredients of this local growth formula, we're trying to tack on top this referral component and come in and say, hey, now all the stuff that you just paid for, it now all of a sudden becomes basically free because you're offsetting it over here. You're filling this funnels to a trickle down over here. And referral looks a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different tactics to pull it off. The big principle is get your customers to sell for you.
And sometimes you got to pay them a little, which is spiffs, but you only pay them once they do it. And essentially what you're doing is getting your flywheel moving. And once it's moving, it will keep moving without you having to do a ton to do it. Because if someone's got a problem, they're asking their neighbor, oh, I saw a plumbing truck over there the other day. I got a plumbing problem. Who was that? And so, they should have an easy way to remember you. Maybe it's a fridge magnet, right? The question is, even on the side of your trucks, do you have QR codes that somebody can get to your website, or flyers, or business? I can't tell you how many times, like when I needed a new guy to mow my lawn, I'd go over to the guys who were mowing the neighbors. Do you have a business card? No.
Isn't it crazy?
Why don't you and I'm like, look, I need to go hire a new guy for next year. Can you get me a quote? Like, you can see my lawn. It's pretty clear. Like, no number, no answer, no nothing. I mean, it's like, and then on top of that, the other worst part is when they don't send me a bill. I get tired of chasing them, and there's some people who just aren't getting paid anymore. because they never sent a bill.
But doesn't this all, it comes back to systems too? I mean, we're talking about the math equation here, but like part of the math equation is quality systems and having those in place. I mean, it's amazing. I just had, a small amount of tree work done at my house and went down. These guys were amazing, professional uniforms, knocked on my door, knocked on my neighbor's door, came down and said, "Hey, you guys have a Google business profile. I can leave you a review." Nothing. We don't have time for all that. We don't have time for any of that online stuff. We don't have time for business cards. We don't have time for marketing. We got too much business, right? I think that's where people are missing the mark is, yeah, we got too much business, but what's our margin on that business? How are we actually putting more profit in our company or in our pockets?
And that is a question. You may have a lot of business because you're the cheapest guy and you don't have margin. So yes, that is the thing. If you don't have margin what we find is when you have too much business, we do two things. We increase prices and we reduce supply, right? Which then automatically drives up your profitability. You work less, you make more, and so be it. There's nothing wrong with that. And it works well. So all of these things, I know a lot of what we talked about sounds overwhelming, but it really isn't. Creating a landing page and a QR code can be done inside of an hour, probably, if that, whether you're doing it yourself or you pay somebody, and it's not that big a deal to do all these things. A lot of them are pretty simple, and it just makes it easy for you to do it. But you actually have to do it. That's you don't take action, then nothing gets done, which is the other half of the problem. So what other ideas do you have for us to make sure that we have that? Because that is one of the biggest problems I think that I see with clients is good, consistent lead flow that turns into sales. Yeah.
I think that's the thing that not just home service business owners struggle with, but every every business owner, every entrepreneur struggles with, right? Is the temptation to throw paint against the wall when it comes to sales and new customer acquisition. And I would just challenge anybody, any business owner out there to don't be shy about testing new things, testing new channels, but be aggressive in how you measure them. Make sure everything you do is measurable. And so you can take action on that measurement at the end. Google Ads doesn't work for everybody. Facebook Ads doesn't work for everybody. 5 rounds, little door hangers, 5 houses around each location doesn't work for everybody. But something will work for you. Just make sure it's measurable when you test it out.
And that is the key. I mean, I think everything does have to be measured and you have to clarity on that measurement. Otherwise, when we go by our gut, more often than not, our gut hasn't given us the real answer. It gives us
or the whole answer, yeah.
Or the whole answer, and we think it's XYZ, but then we realize, oh, wait, it isn't XYZ. It was something totally different and I didn't realize it. And you get yourself in trouble. And that's why I think so many business owners struggle. And let's face it, if you're in the home services industry, you went into the home services industry to do what you love, whether that was putting in pools, putting up decks. I don't think marketing was on the list, and I know accounting wasn't. But without these types of things, without the leads, you don't get to do the work. And once you do the work, if you don't get to keep some of the money, well, it's all kind of a waste of time.
That's right. I agree. And that's really, at the end of the day, our why for being in marketing. You're right. Marketing wasn't on the list, but I mean, we love our community. We live in Augusta, Georgia. We actually opened a coffee shop in Augusta, Georgia. We love our community so much. We want to see these businesses thrive and succeed because without these blue collar home service businesses, Augusta doesn't exist. Harrisburg doesn't exist. Washington, D.C. doesn't exist. We don't have, Washington, D.C. might exist. We should back up on that one. But we don't have the thriving cultural backbones of our communities without these home service businesses. And Fencepost just gets to be a small part of that. Hopefully we can put some more profit back in your pockets by giving you predictable, profitable, qualified leads.
And that's what it's all about. Any closing thoughts for this episode?
I'm just so thankful I get to hop on. I mean, Profit First has been a game changer for my own business, my own life. And Rocky, I'm thankful to be on with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. If people would like to learn more about you and your company, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, get our team to give you a free 5-minute video assessment of your current setup. Go to Fencepost, Fencepost fencepost.co, and fill out a form for a free 5-minute assessment. We'd love to give you one.
Cool. And we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rocky.
Once again, you see someone who has successfully implemented profit first. And he's done it for the home services businesses. On top of that, he's giving you strategies that you can use far beyond that to help your business grow. Now, maybe you say, well, I'm not in this kind of business. Well, that's all the better because your business environment is X, and this business environment is Y. But when you can take the principles from over there and bring it over here, that's a game changer. You change the way that you're talking to everyone else versus how your competitors are. That's why I love to steal ideas from other industries and bring them to different industries because everybody looks at things differently. And it's when you can do that differently in your industry that you're a trendsetter, you get out of the curve, and then you don't need more resources because you were more resourceful by finding those ideas. Of course, we always focus on the bottom line, making sure that you're profitable.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done for you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.